Okay, now we have normally there's a good and the bad and ugly, so let's talk about the ugly for a moment. Here's one token which is particularly nice. It was issued or developed in the middle of the craze of the Ethereum token, and I'm going to point you to the icon particular on what it is. It is referred to the UET, the useless Ethereum token, and it portrayed itself as being the world's first 100% honest ICO. Right? And so what it basically says is you're going to give some random person on the internet money, and they're going to take it and go buy stuff with it. Probably some form of electronics, like a flat screen TV, but to be honest, maybe it's whatever it is. Right? So now, seriously, don't buy these tokens. This is on their website. Right? This was a joke. However, at some point, the contributions to this particular ICO were on the order of $270,000 or 310 Ether at the time. Now, there could be many reasons for that. People may have done this for fun. There were a lot of people at the height of the craze when ETH traded at $1,200 that were just flushed in cash, that had millions and millions in their bank account. And what is an extra ETH? They just gave it to this thing for fun, right? So let's just be clear about this. You don't really know what drives people. So I don't think there's in any way you can argue that these are reasonable investors there. But the point I'm trying to make is people still put money into this thing, even though it was completely transparent about being useless and taking your money and being willing to run with it. Next, there's some data collected by something called the Satis Group. And they looked at the different token offerings that existed at the time in 2018. And they determined that about 81% of them were total scams. I mean, there was nothing ever coming out of these tokens. Importantly, though, these tokens never actually went to trading, or they never really actually raised any serious money. Now, then there's another 6% of the tokens that failed or that went dead. So that's another 11%. So we're already at 92%. So only 8% of all ICOs moved on to trading. Of those, about a certain fraction, about a third, were dwindling, 2/3 or almost half were successful in some form, and another third roughly was, so now these numbers don't add up, I'm sorry, I'm just eyeballing it here, probably a quarter or so is sort of promising. So now you may argue, well, this is really tiny fraction of ICOs that actually go anywhere. But in some sense, you can also think about it as the market is not so bad. Actually, people figure out that these are scams, so they actually never make it anywhere, right? So people aren't that stupid. So there's sort of like a wisdom of a crowd, at least at the time, in terms of filtering out the scams. Now here's the amount of money that the successful and unsuccessful ones, skip this slide. Now here's another thing. So the one thing we also wonder about is how good are these ICOs? So there is a website called new.bitcoin.com, and they looked at roughly 900 of these ICOs. They looked at how many failed. They looked how many have already failed in the funding stage and have failed after the funding stage. And they basically determined that 46% of all the 2017 ICOs have already failed. And this was data collected then in 2018. And I would imagine that if we go to 2020, we're having a much larger fraction even that fails. Now, just to put this into perspective, 6% of ICOs failing sounds like a gigantic number, but let's just think about this, right? So if you take some data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the first year failure, so this is the first year of operation of a firm, of businesses that have employees, so these are not sole proprietorships, there could be sole proprietorships, but these are not, like one person doing one thing, right? It's about 20%. Now, if you look at VC-backed startups, 75% of about 2,000 that went from 2004 to 2010 never returned cash to their investors, and of the remaining 30% of those actually totally implode. I mean, the rest then gets bought up in some form, but it basically says that startups also are often not successful, right? So now ICOs, where are they? What is the long run feature of them? We don't really know. Now they are not as good as an average company, but just keep in mind these firms that have employees in that fail, they could also be laundromats, right? Or it could be restaurants, right? So These are not the kind of firms that where you actually go to a worldwide audience to purchase, to get them involved as investors.